Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is For the Singers. You are with myself, Mel Toy, vocal coach from London, and my good friend Cathal, whose name I can never pronounce. Ever.
That was a good effort. Hi, everybody. I feel sick today, but I'll survive. I'm a trooper.
Hey, so today we are looking at ego, E to the G to the O for vocalists. And what does that even mean? I think sort of coming on to have a chat about it, we both agree that singers have egos. I suppose that means as singers, we have egos.
I suppose.
Should we be admitting that on the internet?
Yeah, I think we should. We're open. We're open.
Yeah, books. We're open books. So then really the question is that useful or is it not useful?
What is the balance of... How much of ego is enough ego? What is the balance of ego that is helpful? So what are the economics of ego? So I think we're going to call this egonomics.
Egonomics. Yeah, absolutely. Egonomics for singers. And I think egonomics is probably quite good because if we think about economics, it's a matter of balancing things, right? It's about balancing those books. And it certainly seems like it might be that way for egonomics as well. I think quite often when we talk about the ego, we think about it, at least in this kind of situation, in terms of singers maybe having more ego than perhaps their instrumentalist counterparts, is that we can look at it socially from a perspective of it maybe being socially awkward sometimes to be the person who is the diva, right? We hear that term thrown around quite a lot. But then also at the same time, we expect singers to be a front person.
Yeah, I think both are true. I kind of wonder, is there another point with the singer that maybe I'm a bass player. I'm strange. I've only ever wanted to be a bass player. I never wanted to be a guitarist and failed and ended up a bass player. But there's always the joke about the bass player being the failed guitarist and that the bass player is, it's the person in the band that couldn't play an instrument. But I wonder, are there some singers? Like when I've read interviews with artists and with people in the music industry over the years, I've heard a lot of singers say that they were just the mate that couldn't play an instrument, so someone had to sing and it was them. Is there actually a feeling of inadequacy with some singers?
Wow. I did not see you coming up with that little nugget now. That's brilliant. Yeah, maybe. And actually, like if we do look at it, sometimes you've got in bands also you've got the lead singer might actually be a guitarist, where you've got a bunch of mates who've all got into a room and started making music and nobody else wanted to do it, so they just put their hand up and did it as well. So what does that mean, right? But how does that person feel when they get up on stage?
Yeah, well, I think I'm realizing it starts to get very complicated very quickly. There's a point you made there about, the ego of the front person in a band. I always with my clients, I make 2 points. The first is if they are singing and playing, like for instance in the studio here, if someone's playing guitar or playing piano and they're singing, I will always remind them that as the pianist or as the guitarist, that musician, because they are two musicians in one at that moment, the job of the instrumentalist is to support the singer. And usually that conversation in my sessions comes up in relation to dynamics in the first place. They can be belting the guitar. I'm playing air guitar here. And singing very gently. And all of a sudden, because the guitarist is playing one way, the guitarist is demanding and imposing that the singer is singing a certain way. And I try and get them to reverse that relationship, even if it's only to try it in the first place. But the other thing that I always say to them is that as the singer, there are two things that are true. The first is that I'm sick today. I've cancelled all my sessions. I can't perform vocally if I'm sick. Whereas if a drummer or a guitarist and the bass player, I'm a bass player as well, as I said, if I'm sick and if I can stand up, I can still basically perform quite well. But the singer, first of all, has that fragility or frailty, I suppose, if you like, that the other musicians don't have. So there's a pressure there. The other one is, and you've only been performing long enough if you've been in this situation at least once where you're on stage and things start to go wrong. And everyone else in the band can kind of look a little bit panicked. But if you're the front person, if you're the lead singer, pretty much everyone in the room is looking at you. And the extra pressure that you feel trying to project calm and that everything is in control, everything is grand, we're just going to continue on here as normal. To project that is something that I think ultimately only front people, ergo singers in that case, usually can relate to.
Yeah. So then in that case, is the ego, if we bring this back to ego then, is ego then a defense mechanism to protect the singer for when stuff goes wrong like that? Because then the implication of that, right, is that if stuff goes wrong, and if it is egotistical, if someone holds a lot of value in terms of their ability to perform, then there's also the possibility that their ego takes a knock when stuff goes wrong. So it's like, do I then need to have an excessively enlarged ego to then be able to protect myself?
To have resilience.
Yeah, like backup ego for when stuff goes wrong, kind of thing. Ego in reserve.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to the economics of it. Yeah, I think possibly. I think where's the line between ego and confidence?
Oh, good question. That's a hot question.
That's a hot question, and is it an impossible question?
You know, I think all of the this is so very philosophical of us. I think there is a level of philosophically to this. Ego and confidence aren't necessarily the same thing. At least not in the way that they were defined originally, right? Because like ego has its counterparts that work in different ways for motivation. And yeah, definitely sort of self-preservation and protection, whereas self-confidence is kind of more of a general kind of feeling of confidence in oneself, not in any specific situations necessarily.
Is perhaps the difference between ego and self-confidence. Ego it's a projection maybe of an idealized version of yourself, whereas self-confidence is a comfort and a resilience in when things aren't quite right.
Yeah, to some extent, but I do think ego, is really much more actually a part of who we are. And it can, and how much we allow that ego to kind of dictate the way that we engage with things, really, sometimes I think it can surprise us. So I'm going to use the example of, I'm a runner, and I've been injured, and I'm really competitive. So I don't like getting passed by people. And I was running the other day, and I was getting passed by some people. And it really hit me that it was ego that was being bruised. And it was the reason why my ego was being bruised was because I had, and this was like a massive moment of sort of self-reflection. I'd locked a lot of my identity into this kind of fitness and exercise thing and being a good runner. So when I was getting passed by these people, it made me question who I was. It made me question like where my space was in this place, because, you know, like 2 months ago that just wouldn't have happened. Like nobody could catch me. Nobody could catch me. And now I'm getting passed. And it really dawned on me how much of my ego was tied up in that particular action.
In music and in the arts and in being creative, is there a difference? I always find where the analogy with sports and creativity breaks down, music, we'll keep it to music here, is when we, you know, you're running. So someone is going to run the marathons that you're doing quickest, and they will apparently win it. Teams playing football, you know, one team will score more goals than the other and they will win. It ain't like that in music. To be the best isn't about the highest note, the loudest sound. You could say it's about maybe being number one for the longest or selling the most copies of an album. Even that's not the same anymore.
I mean, it's business acumen as well, isn't it?
This is true, but to bring it back to us as musicians and as singers, what master are we serving in terms of stoking our ego? Because it really, to have an empirical, a definitive value to say this is what makes me the best, it doesn't exist.
No, but if we're measuring ourselves against our own standards and we feel like we're not living up to them, then that could impact. So that goes back to the running, right? So my standard and my idea of myself was this, and then I wasn't performing at that in that particular moment.
Well, you say that, but that's just because some people passed you while you were running. You don't
Yes,
know.
I know. It's pretty in depth, wasn't it?
You're
I
holding this.
took it a bit personally. But like, if we do that, and if we put that onto a stage, right? So the example you gave is that you're on stage and stuff starts to go wrong. Right? So normally it would be fine, but you have this idealized image of yourself as a performer and your ego might be tied up in that. Like that might be how you hold your value as a performer. Then if stuff starts to go wrong, then that could have a similar detrimental impact in terms of who am I now in this space? How do I fit into this space if I can't manage when stuff goes wrong?
Is perfectionism related to this?
Possibly to some extent, depending on the person. The perfectionism such a thorn topic because it's like
let's talk about the economics of perfectionism for a moment, given that for this conversation. I always think be enough of a perfectionist to nonetheless enjoy what you do today, but strive to do it even better tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's not really perfectionism, is it?
Yeah. So my goal in life, I think I might just actually make this my mission, is to have all singers stop calling themselves perfectionists. Like let's stop with the name calling, because perfectionism itself is super detrimental. Like an actual perfectionist, it's not about striving to be better. Striving to be better is fine. Strive to be better, please. Strive to be better. That's great. But actual perfectionism, nothing is ever good enough, ever. You don't get to enjoy your successes, which is so detrimental to artists who are expressive, creative people. But you know what? I could ramble about that forever, and we're going to go totes off. What are we doing? Egonomics. So maybe we should do perfectionism another day. But yeah, it's like. Bleh.
Well, I'm just curious about the relationship and just something about the singer's ego. For instance, singers, and I had a conversation with an old client of mine recently where we were talking about adopting a stage name for your project, and whether you're within a band or you are the artist. Think of an Elton John, who the Taxman probably knows as Reginald Dwight. But we all know him as Elton John.
Does he use a stage name?
Yeah.
Is it a stage name? Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
My dad is the biggest Elton John fan in the world, so I knew that. But I think it's understandable that people can kind of deduce from that. Oh well, there's a bit of an ego trip. They don't want their God-given name. But actually, the point that I had that this artist was making, the conversation we had, was that having this other name, having this near alter ego, there's that word again, allowed this person to have a bravery and sense of themselves to do things that maybe they didn't feel they could do otherwise. No, I'm capturing that a bit wrong, but gave them gave them the ability to differentiate themselves from their art in a little way that allowed them to nurture their creativity and their artistry in a different way.
Yes. And there's other artists who've done it as well. I mean, like David Bowie is an obvious one. We forget Beyonce has Sasha Fierce that she goes out on stage as well. There's a really cool interview actually on YouTube somewhere, the magical grounds of YouTube, where Beyonce talks about Sasha Fierce and how in her real life she's quite shy, but Sasha Fierce allows her to kind of free herself and she allows her to be Sasha Fierce when she goes out on stage. And I think in addition to the obvious kind of creative expressive stuff, I think it also might give the artist an opportunity to leave their world behind and step into this space that they're creating for their fans in a different way. Which is just, it's like same, but just with a slightly tilt of the coin way of looking at that. If that made sense.
Yeah, I often think of, I've 600 second favourite singers, but I have one favourite singer who is Freddie. And Freddie, in his off time, was a guy that, lived in his house, hardly came out, and lived with his cats. But when he went on stage, he just became this force of nature.
Yeah.
and maybe, I don't know if it's ego or not, but maybe having that alter ego is a really helpful thing to let some performers, and emphasize that term right now, performers, to really come out themselves and thrive doing what they do.
I love that. I actually really like where that's brought us to in terms of egonomics as well, because it's kind of, I feel like we've kind of come full circle in a weird way. We've explored the positives, we've explored the potential challenges that people might face in terms of managing their ego, and then this idea of an alter ego. And really it's going to depend on the person as to what they need to put in their egonomics bank account.
This is true. I think you've summed that up very well. I think we'll sum it up here, shall we, or finish up?
Let's do it.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. We hope this little chat about egonomics has been helpful. It was terrifically planned down to the word, wasn't it, Mel?
Yeah. Next time we'll come with jokes.
So keep an eye out on For the Singers for more content. Feel free to leave comments, offer feedback, topics even that you feel might be helpful or interesting for us to discuss. And we will have some more releases very soon. Say bye, Mel.
See you soon.